little bit better. And now, oh, there she is. That just kicked in. Now you can hear me. Just before we get started, I just want to give one more enthusiastic round of applause to our phenomenal artists who presented today, Marie Engel, Aurélien Euler. Please give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Now, I did come up here to interview Marie and Aurélien, and I didn't know that Grace Kelly was actually going to be sitting next to me because this old Hollywood glamour is everything for me.
What does that make me?
Well, listen, Cary Grant, we were getting there. So for those of you who got to see Così fan tutte, we obviously saw a very different side of Marie today. We also saw a very different side of Aurélien. Aurélien,
The back.
Aurélien is our rehearsal pianist for rehearsals when we're doing main stage opera. He also plays in the pit. So today, to start us out, I would love to find out from each of your perspective, what was the process like of preparing something so collaborative after doing something that was so high camp and so high shtick? How was this recital different for the two of you?
For me, there was definitely an emotional connection with this that was different than the one in Così. The one in Così is very much a created character to fit along with what the director has planned for the show. Whereas when you do this kind of chamber music, you can really bring a lot of yourself to it, and if you don't, it generally lacks that heart. So for me, it's much more personal. In the process of learning repertoire like this and learning poetry like this, and especially in other languages, you have to come to know it very intimately, not only to memorize the words, but to understand emotionally how it affects you.
Oh, absolutely. Aurélien,
Gosh,
what
I
about
have to
you?
follow that.
Yes, she really nailed that answer, so let's see if Aurélien can keep up.
Yeah, right. No, well, for me, what was really great was to, I mean, I love collaborating and getting back after, I mean, we had so much, if you guys couldn't tell, we had so much fun with Così, and it was great. It was great that Marie was here because we actually started, when was our first rehearsal? Was I think in September or something.
Right.
So we were able to find some time during that production to work. And just really get very nerdy about every song. We would plan to do a whole like 7 to 8 songs per 2 hours, and it'd be like an hour 45, and we were on song 4 because we were just really
Well,
digging
you know,
into
that's
them.
actually, that's such an interesting thing about recital repertoire, because these artists chose the pieces they were going to present for us today. And I know that this was coming back to this music for both of you in some ways. Aurélien, could you tell us a little bit about what it's like to come back to this music at this point in your life now as a husband and a father? How was coming back to some of this music different for you?
Don't make me go there.
Let the people know.
Well, no, it's really interesting. So the Schumann and the Debussy, the Fauré is new. Hopefully it didn't sound new, but the Schumann and the Debussy I've been playing for 15 years. But it was really interesting, and I did a production of Rigoletto a few years back, and the conductor. It was his first time doing that piece after being a dad to a daughter. And he was a mess, and he was always like, one day you'll understand, like it's just like once you have kids it just changes you. And so Carrie-Anne caught us in the process of rehearsing the one song in the Schumann where she finds out she's gonna be a mother, and it's just like that whole perspective just shifted. So it was really interesting to, like, you know, at first when we were discussing repertoire, I was like, oh yeah, Schumann, Debussy, yeah, that's fine. I know them. Yeah. And then working through them with Marie, it was just like, oh, now I think of them so differently. And it was. But the beauty of those pieces is that you can do them over a certain period of time. It will never be the same because everybody just brings something else. And so yeah, so that was really one of the one of the highlights of being, doing those old pieces that just felt so new and with another whole other perspective, for sure.
So another thing that Brendan asked of all of y'all before we started was to not applaud in between the individual songs in the sets. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because it's different than how we behave in an opera where a piece ends, an aria ends, and you start clapping right away. Marie, from your perspective, what does that do for the storytelling as you're creating that arc with something like the Schumann, to have the audience with you for that process?
And thank you guys for
Oh my
for
goodness!
this. Yeah, it was
Phenomenal.
oof.
Yes. Yeah. The emotional energy to go through the whole piece and give it the entire arc from the beginning, from seeing someone and falling in love with them to them dying at the end. Really requires an intense amount of focus, and it includes the pauses between. You think about the time that happens between getting married and having a baby. There's not a lot of time in this song cycle, but that happens. So you have to create a little bit of that energy, even in those silences. And the other thing, I mean, there's definitely, in the Schumann in particular, there's a couple of songs where the singer has to start in the same tonality that the last song just ended. And so if there's clapping, sometimes it's like, oh no, I forgot where I was. But the biggest thing, I think, for me is definitely the emotional arc that goes through that. When it's broken up, suddenly you're thrown out of the world where you're this person in this story and you are a performer again.
And I have to add to that like, again, like, you guys were great. It was great from us also. Like, when we left for intermission, I stayed in the back for like a minute, and just like the room didn't move. Like, you guys were still like processing, and that's we lose that if if there's clapping in between every song, and then it makes the recital a lot longer too. So. Yeah.
I know we're going to want to open it up for anyone who has questions, but before we do, just briefly, if I could ask both of you to say, what did Morgan mean to you as the final piece? That like unexpected piece that ended our program today. What made you choose Morgan?
We just didn't want you guys to feel too happy.
Well, Morgan, I will say, actually, it does make me feel super happy.
Yeah.
I get that hopefulness that you were talking about with it. It does seem like anything is possible listening to that piece. And was that what you were trying to convey to us?
I think there's something about Morgan is a song that I've had with me for a long time in my life, since 2016 actually, which is when I lost my mother. And there is this feeling in Morgan of reuniting with someone who you have not been with in a really long time. That idea that tomorrow we'll be able to meet and walk along the beaches, and we'll be able to gaze silently into each other's eyes. And after a program of music that's about all different kinds of love, and some with tragedy and some with hope, I think the beauty is that even in the tragedy, there's still hope, and you get that from Morgan.
I just want to let that. I just want to let
yeah,
that.
I'm not going to follow
sit there for a second, right? That was so. It's such a beautiful, and knowing your connection to the piece, I think, makes it that much more meaningful. I hope for all of us as an audience.
Well, what's also really, I'm going to give you the behind the scenes. Like, we struggled so much. We did not decide that encore until Friday because we didn't feel like anything that we kind of bounced back and forth. It just didn't make sense with the whole program. And then Marie brought Morgan. She was like, "What about that?" And I was like, "Yeah, that just feels perfect." And it's like it interrupted the what did I call it? The Alsatian sandwich of like two French and a German in the middle or something. And no, it was that's just the
I mean, I really do. I think it did fit so perfectly and so beautifully, and it rounded out the story of love that you were sharing with us. Now, that's something that you really can only get in these curated recitals. You know, when our artists are doing main stage opera. I mean, you gotta give it up again for a phenomenal Dorabella. She was a hoot and a holler. Right? And then to see the depth of her soul presenting music like this to us is really such a gift that both of you have given us today. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I would love to see if anyone has any questions for our artists. No question too strange. Yes.
Well,
What are the factors in your childhood that led you to decide to pursue music as a career?
What were the factors in your childhood that led you to pursue music?
I thought we were going somewhere else
As
with
a
that question.
career.
I was like,
Right? That led to this music. That's a tricky one, but an important question.
Yeah.
What led you down this path to find that music is your way of connecting with people?
Well, my parents always liked to tell the story that right after I was born, the first thing they noticed was how big my mouth was and how loud I was, even as a baby. And I was always I think I've always been very expressive. I've learned recently I can hide no emotion on my face, sometimes to my detriment. But so those things, and then growing up in a very musical family, a very musical community. I'm a Mennonite, and so we do a lot of four-part hymn singing, and music is incredibly important on both sides of my family. But admittedly, I sang a lot of popular music until I was 16, and my mom was like, "You're going to ruin your voice. You need to take voice lessons." And so I started discovering opera then. I just started discovering classical singing. And I'm so thankful for it because it has become such a beautiful outlet for me in my sometimes over-the-top expressiveness to be able to tell stories to people and bring people together.
Yes, and the beautiful stillness of it to really show like the whole range of what you're capable of. I'm just going to keep hyping up Marie because I think she's absolutely phenomenal. Now, Aurelian has been in America now for 20 years.
oh, yeah.
Is that right?
16?
15, 16?
16.
You started in France playing piano from a very, very young age. What
was
called
5.
you into the classics?
Well, so starting, like, so I come from a very, very rural background, and people laugh when I call it a village, but I literally, like, grew up in, like, it was not like Beauty and the Beast where everybody was opening their windows and singing, but it was like 300 people, and when you were a kid, when you were a boy growing up, it was like you liked soccer and you had a motorbike, and I did not like any of those. I did not have a motorbike, and I could not play soccer to save my life. But my one day, the music school system opened a school in a hall in my town, and they dropped a piano there, and they were like, if people are interested, and my parents were like, let's try. And apparently, the story goes that like after a week, I was like, that's what I'm gonna do, and I just never.
How
never
many
knew.
hours would you say you practice
Oh my
a
God.
day?
Well, I was not the best at that. I think I've done my 10,000 by now, but I think in college, in college was probably like 6-8 hours a day, but before that, 3-4.
But we can hear it in the way that you play.
But now,
Yeah.
I'm practicing.
Any other questions? Anybody curious about anything from our artists? Yes, Jerry.
Well, thank you for your questions.
Of course.
They're very poignant.
Thank you.
And I got a lot out of the answers, but my question is more lighthearted. And I've got two, one for each of you.
Okay,
Marie, I expected you to be beautiful, and you are.
thank you.
I expected you to have a gorgeous voice, and you have one. But I was surprised at how excellent your French and German is. And,
There you go.
I'd like to hear a little bit what accounts for that. Brilliant.
I'm beautiful. You expected me to.
My question for you is, how does language, if in any way, influence your interpretation of a piece? Does it enter into it, or is it something that doesn't?
Oh, I love these questions.
You
so
answer first.
We'll
I gotta
start.
think
We'll
of that
start
one.
with Marie. So Marie singing in French and German for us so beautifully, and singing so effectively in Italian just a few weeks ago. Jerry was asking about. I mean, really, how do you feel comfortable in all of these languages? How does it feel to move between them so fluidly, and really, what makes you feel so good about it?
I have had a great blessing of being able to study in Vienna for 2 years, where I learned German and I studied Lieder. And then also this past year, I have actually just relocated to the United States after spending a year in Paris, where I was studying French and studying Mélodie. So admittedly, I am not nearly as comfortable with Italian because I don't speak the language, and so it takes longer to memorize. And it is so important to me for singing French and German song repertoire to have a conversational understanding of the language, because when you're digging into poetry that's this complex, you need to understand which words really resonate within the sentence to create colors within the music. And it really changes how you sing the music, which I think goes right into the question you asked, Aurélien.
Yes. No, I was gonna answer part of your question too, because it's for those of you who don't know this, Marie was part of our 2020 faded class of young artists, and that we had to send home after 2 weeks. And so we've always had, like, when we're thinking of programming, we always also have those people in mind, like, what can we do? And so when I think you came back last year or 2 years ago for
Last year.
yeah, and so I was like, oh well, sing's great. Just spent a year in France. Let's do something. Let's see, So that was also one of the motivations, and then we ended up doing just half of that. But for me, it's it is very important. It helps me a lot to be fluent in both those languages, because it helps me prepare a lot faster than, say, the last recital we had, like the whole cycle that we had in Russian. That was a lot more time for me to understand the text before I can even get to the music. So I think it helps playing along with the text when you have a complete understanding of the text, and so with French and German, I'm pretty much set. Now, if we do something in Czech, I'm gonna start.
It probably,
tomorrow.
I suspect it also helps you communicate with the singer more effectively to, like, create the story
Sure.
more effectively. Like, you're being fluent in these languages.
It's
I'm
not
sure.
scary for the singer at all.
Right. Well, it opens up such a door to, like, we're always trying to get closer and closer to being perfect, but perfection is not necessarily the end goal. We want to be accurate.
We're
so
smiling because we had a discussion
you can, like,
about that
keep us
yesterday.
on top of that. But what you created together was really, like, collaborative art. You two telling the story together. It was really powerful. Any other questions? Yes.
To add that collaborative piece of it, if you had a pianist who didn't understand
Right.
the language, didn't understand the poetry,
Oh my goodness.
then all of the musical direction is coming from the singer, and that would be boring for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that, this was evidence of you both having musical and poetic ideas, and we're the winners for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for sticking around for our Q&A. Another huge round of applause for our fantastic artists.
Thank you.